Welcome. The League of Women Voters, Metro North Chamber of Commerce, and North Suburban Optimist welcomes you to this forum to meet the candidates running for Anoka County Soil and Water Conservation District 1. This includes the cities of Ramsey, Anoka, a small piece of Coon Rapids, Nowthen, Oakgrove, and St. Francis. Districts 4 and 5 are also on the ballot, but the incumbents, Mary Jo Truchon and Sharon LeMay, do not have challengers, so we won't have a forum for these offices. Thanks to the candidates, Andover City Hall and QCTV for making this event possible. This year, the League of Women Voters is holding all of our Meet the Candidate forums without an audience to avoid COVID-19 spread. Questions for upcoming forums for the general election can be submitted on the League of Women Voters ABC website. I'm Jerry Nelson. I'm the voter service chair for the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters, and I live in Champlin and Hennepin County, so I can't vote for any of you guys. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose any political party or candidate for office. I'm sure these candidates care very much who you vote for, but the League of Women Voters does not. The League does hope that each of you will vote, and the goal of our forums is to help citizens become informed voters. Both candidates for Anoka County Soil and Water District 1 are here. Welcome, Steve Leighton and Colleen Werdin. We will begin with 3 questions that were provided to the candidates in advance. This will be followed by questions submitted online. Candidates will alternate who answers each question first. The answers will be timed and are limited to 1 minute. So let's start with Steve Leighton. And would you please describe your background and community involvement?
Sure. Well, my name is Steve Leighton. I'm a longtime resident of the Lower Rum since my childhood. I went to Anoka Senior High. That's where I graduated in 1992, and I went on to study architectural engineering at the University of Minnesota. My first involvement with actual civics government is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which came out in my last year of high school, in which we were asked to redesignate all the bathrooms to accompany handicapped individuals within the school communities. And that led to, we did 4 or 5 schools at the time. They were all high schools that we were addressing. And that just kept leading me into an interest in doing these small, on-the-ground projects just to move city government along. And so now my involvement is more as a funder, being the secretary of the board, and I'm enjoying it so far.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, what is your background and community involvement?
I've lived in Anoka for 7.5 years. I'm a master gardener, and I also am part of the Andover Pollinator Awareness Project, both which deal with health of the environment. I also participate with the Anoka Area Climate Action, which looks at the warming climate. Currently, I'm on the HRA board in Anoka, and their function is to maintain the housing stock in Anoka. So some of the things we do is we buy like places that are not in good repair and sell them to someone who will improve them. I have a master's in public health nursing, and I have an elementary degree in a bachelor's in elementary education. I was a nurse. And previously, I was on the Princeton Planning Commission, and Columbia Heights, I worked on their library.
Thank you. Colleen, what are your qualifications for serving as Anoka County Commissioner, and why are you seeking this office?
Well, I'm seeking it because for the past, few years, I've been really sad about the state of the environment and wanted to see what I could do, and I've joined a number of organizations to improve it. But when I looked at the Soil and Conservation District, what I liked about them is they did get some funding, and so they had some money where they could make some changes. And I think the things I saw that they were working on are things that I think are important for the environment and the world. I think we need to look and see what we can do in a small way, and hopefully we can be replicated throughout.
Thank you. Jeff Leighton, what are your qualifications for serving as Anoka County Soil and Water Conservation District? I'm sorry, I
Didn't want to correct you the first time.
This was from the other forum that we just did. And why are you seeking this office?
Well, I'm seeking this office one more time, actually, as your incumbent. I'm seeking the office one more time because some of the plans that I've been working on and some of the things I've been working on at the Anoka Conservation District, one, they've been slowed down by this pandemic, and they've also been slowed down just because staff are maximized in their staff hours at this point in time. They just need more time to see some of these ideas come to fruition. It's my qualifications. I've worked in a couple different areas of government: family law, judicial review, transportation committee. Those qualifications, though, didn't really match my business sense of how to tighten up and shore up ACD's business arrangement. And I think that's where these big changes have come that people have noticed in the last 4 years of what we do. And that's why I'm continuing that work.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, what are your short and long-term goals for Anoka County?
We just went through a 10-year planning process known as the Fourth Generation Plan. A lot of my ideas got involved in that plan. One of those big things that I feel that this county is lacking is more investment in groundwater protection. The last time I was in this building was probably one of the best meetings I had in regards to groundwater protection, right here in Andover City Hall. These ideas just started spawning. They came out of these experts right and left, and we've been utilizing as many of them as we can. But one of those things that how we tried to utilize them was through the use of public outreach. Rebuilding our education machine was one of those things that was a need to happen thing, and that came out as public outreach. And we got groundwater, we got all the cities working together. That was one vision. In the future, I would like to see more groundwater activities happen in Anoka County.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, what are your short-term and long-term goals for Anoka County?
I think my long-term goal is the same as the goals stated by the Soil and Conservation, is to enhance and conserve natural resources. I'm also concerned about the quality of the water and the soil. I'm concerned about invasive species. I'm concerned about the increasing temperature. I would like to see more native plants. I'm concerned about the loss of habitat. And I want to know how we can engage people so that they can participate and be part of the solution. Things like citizen scientists, or we even have loans now so people can improve their yards to increase the amount of native plants they have. And I think we need to create some corridors because habitat is becoming less and less.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to the questions that have come in online, and we've got some really nice ones. I think you'll like them. The first one, Colleen, you'll start with. As more homes and businesses are built in the metro area, long-term underground aquifer water supply may become a bigger issue. What would you, as an elected official, do to deal with this issue?
I mean, I think we need to keep watching what's happening to the water because obviously it is decreasing and we need to know that it has quality for our future organizations. Looking at the website of the Soil and Conservation District, it appears that they do monitor it. And I think it's a collaborative kind of thing, so we would work with businesses too.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, what is as more homes and businesses are built in the metro area, the long-term underground aquifer water supply may become a bigger issue. What would you do as an elected official to deal with this issue?
Well, once again, we've already began that step by adding groundwater protection as almost an equal component in our comprehensive plan. It's no secret that Anoka County will double its population in the next 10 years. That you can go right to the state of Minnesota and they'll tell you that it's going to happen. As far as quantity, we know that the waters always come back in groundwater. We just know that from dealing with city engineers. And when you talk to the city engineers, in which case most of these municipals are groundwater fed, they will tell you those waters always come back. They might lower from time to time, but they always return to us. As far as pollutants, there's hundreds of pollutants, and we have to address each one as they pop up, and we have to monitor and regulate the pollutant itself and not the people involved over those sensitive areas.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, what is your 50-year goal or vision for the condition of soil and water in Anoka County? What will you personally do in the next 4 years to achieve this goal?
Independent funding is probably the greatest thing we can achieve in Anoka County, which we already have a venue to do that through Green Guardian Incorporated. Our nationwide distribution network is estimated to bring us $20 to $30 million in independent funding over the next 20 years. And with that, there's no language criteria. We are free to do with that profit money whatever we'd like or whatever is requested of us at that time. And so opening up independent funding with bare minimum language criteria so that it's more easily accessible to everybody. I think creating equitable solutions like that for all of the citizens of Anoka County is what's important.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, what is your 50-year goal or vision for the condition of soil and water in Anoka County? What will you personally do in the next 4 years to achieve this goal?
I think if the water quality improves, that would be my goal for the future. I think since I'm new to the Soil and Conservation District, I would need to do some research about what's possible and what can be done so that we can kind of accommodate habitat and people. We know the population is increasing, but what are the ways that we can coexist with that, ensuring that we have quality water and habitat and conserve our natural resources.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, do you feel a need to increase coordination and support from other organizations concerning your district's projects? If so, which organizations do you want additional support from? And how would you go about obtaining their voluntary assistance?
I was part of the Andover Pollinator Awareness Project, and that was an interesting organization, is an interesting organization. We have people from the Soil and Conservation, we have people that are private citizens. I think we would attempt to include state people, county people, and city people together, coming together to talk about what we can do to have the best impact on our environment.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, do you feel a need to increase coordination and support from other organizations concerning your district's projects? If so, which organizations do you want additional support from, and how would you go about obtaining their voluntary assistance?
Well, one of the things we did in the last 4 years at ACD is we took Water Task Force down. We with the retirement of Bert Biermeyer, we decided that maybe that Water Task Force wasn't serving the county's best interests. And so what we did is we went to the Board of Commissioners, we asked for control over Water Task Force, and we evolved it. We turned it into what's called the Anoka Water Resources Collaborative. It is an organization that is pretty much self-run by the city governments. The municipals are really the partners in that, and it's through that that public outreach goes out, and that's where the boots on the ground activity happens, is in the local area. And so how can I help them more is just by supporting and promoting them and keeping them going.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, why is it important that the Anoka County Soil and Water Conservation District work closely with local watershed districts?
Ooh, well, it's always nice to have a landowner, whether it's a city or whether it's a private landowner. It's always nice to have somebody feel like they're invested or that they bought into this idea instead of just having you plot an idea for them. It's always better to feel like people are invested and they got their hands dirty doing something. So in dealing with water management organizations and the watershed districts, the partnerships involve a lot of cost sharing of funds to match Clean Water Fund. It involves a lot of technical assistance and sometimes that funding assistance as well. So it's important to us because we only have so many staff available for the entire county, and it's really on the local level where we see more boots in the ground, hands on deck.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, why is it important the Anoka County Soil and Water Conservation District work closely with local watershed districts?
Well, I think it's important that we work with as many organizations and groups as we can. I think the more people can work together with a common goal of improving the environment, the more success we can have. And I think as Steve was talking about, you need to tie people into the organization so they feel some ownership too. And that I think you can have better solutions with people feeling that they are part of the solution.
Thank you. The Anoka Conservation District is based on county boundaries, while watershed districts are based on water flow areas like Coon Creek and the Rum River. They are governed by separate statewide organizations, and they have different roles and areas of expertise. Would you support legislation to give conservation districts taxpayer levy authority like watershed districts have? Colleen, you're first on this.
I think I would. I would need to research it some more. I don't know what all the issues are. I'm part of the HRA board in Anoka, and what's nice is we have the ability to tax, so we actually have some money to do the work. I would need to do some more research. I really don't know all that's implied, but just by my gut, I say yes.
Okay, Steve Leighton. Anoka Conservation District is based on county boundaries, while watershed districts are set up based on water flow areas, Coon Creek, Rum River. They are governed by separate statewide organizations, and they have different roles and areas of expertise. Would you support legislation to give conservation districts taxpayer levy authority like the watershed districts have?
I think it's no secret that I've pretty much opposed this my entire term, and that's for the reason that I support independent funding. In Anoka County, if you were to take a look at what would happen if we were to change to a taxing authority system at ACD, you would find out our general services money would be just about the same. It wouldn't make a difference. To some of the counties in the southern part of the state, it might make a greater difference because they could attain more funding, but here personally in Anoka County, we already have enough independent funding where it's a mute conversation to me.
Okay. Steve, the next question goes to you first. Should conservation district supervisors be appointed rather than elected? If so, by whom?
You know, it used to be that the conservation supervisors ran a county-wide race. Instead of now it's done by territorial limits, just like every other representative. And I honestly like it better this way because now you don't have to run all over the county. And there are some instances, like with the water managers, they're appointed. I think that voters deserve to have some voice on the soil and water concept itself instead of having them all appointed or just all educated into place. So having elected officials there to check and balance the system and kind of provide oversight for these people, I think that's very important.
Colleen Werdin, should conservation district supervisors be appointed rather than elected? And if so, by whom?
I think it's good that they're elected so they can put what they want to do before the public, and the public can decide rather than be appointed.
Okay, Colleen, first, you can answer this one first. How can conservation districts reduce flooding?
I think we can look at a variety of things by improving the environment, trying to, so that it takes the runoff. I mean, there's some things like rain gardens. We need to look at about the quality of the soil and the plants we have on the soil. I think when you look at things that can be done on the river to improve the banking so it's not eroding. But I think we need to look at how we can, using plants, and also looking at where we have parking and different areas. What can we do to make sure that things go into the ground?
Thank you. Steve Leighton, how can conservation districts reduce flooding?
It always seems during drought season, people want to talk about conservation ponding, and when in high water times, people want to talk about the right to drainage. And the right to drainage is a landowner right. They have a process for that. I'm not really in favor of doing mass drainage, though. I've heard of people wanting to drain entire ditches, and that is just, to me, that's ecologically wrong, because that's how groundwater protection begins, is by protecting those flooded areas for infiltration reasonings. And so my best suggestion as far as where ACD takes flooding is to provide more infiltration in the ground.
Thank you. Steve Leighton, assess the amount of public knowledge of your watershed district. Is it sufficient? If not, what would you do to educate the public?
Well, I think I've brushed this concept a couple times already. We've already put public outreach out there. I think the knowledge about the Rum River is, well, I think it's something everybody knows on the local level. I'm not sure if there's a lot of attraction to it from outside of the river valley itself. But the people who live in the river valley seem to know the river valley better than anybody, better than the experts, if you ask me in some cases. An expert can tell you the percentage of phosphorus in the water, but they can't tell you why that bank eroded necessarily, or the physics of how a bank eroded, because they weren't there. They just weren't there. So to me, it's both things are very important to have that knowledge, but I think the Rum River is the main focal point of the county, but I think that's what it is. It's just the second cleanest river in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you. Colleen Werdin, assess the amount of public knowledge of your watershed district. Is it sufficient? If not, what would you do to educate the public?
I don't think it's sufficient. Just thinking about what I know, I'm just beginning to learn about the watershed district. And I think we would try to educate people and involve them in many different ways. I mean, it might be, the traditional kinds of ways through social media, which they're already doing, in blogs, but getting out there where the people are, the county fairs, public events, so that people do learn more about it.
Okay, the next question is going to Colleen first. How can conservation districts have an impact on problems associated with climate change?
Well, I think there are some things we can do with climate change. Even something as simple it seems as like trying to have more native plants, increasing the amount of trees, looking how we, what we do with trees and forests, how do we plan for that. For them, as we're doing building, you know, how we've built in the past is we keep expanding and expanding, and maybe we can look at how we organize things a little differently that are more friendly to the environment, and also looking at using alternative fuels instead of gas. I mean, can we use some solar? Can we use some wind?
Thank you. By the way, this is the last question, and then we'll go to closing statements. Steve, how can conservation districts have an impact on problems associated with climate change?
Well, I think Colleen hit a big core item when she mentioned conservation corridoring. And it seems to me that a lot of the problems we have dealing with climate change here are based off of humidity. They're not based off of raw ambient heat. They're based more off of humidic conditions. And so when we talk about conservation corridors, we talk about both planting and thinning for management purposes. And I think that's one thing we can do. Continually conservation ponding in some areas, both residential and commercial areas, that collectively would help us battle those problems also. But mostly when we talk about climate change at ACD, it's become more of a conversation about adaptation to the climate change. It's not really about how do we try to affect the climate change. It's how do people adapt to that change itself.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to our 1-minute closing statements, and Steve, you will go first.
Well, I've had a really great time serving people the last 4 years. I took a part of your county government that wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrible, but it just needed a little extra here, it needed a little extra there. And I think once we took care of some of the things that weren't producing for us, we moved forward. We created as many equitable solutions for everybody in the county as possible. And I'd like to continue to see some of these plans approved, and some of these ideas that I've spent the last 3.5 years planning, those things are finally coming in the ground in the next 2 years. And I'm hoping I can stick around and see them facilitated through. But once again, in November, please vote for Steve Leighton. I'd appreciate your support.
Thank you. And Colleen Werdin, your closing statement.
I think it's exciting, some of the things that can happen through the Soil and Conservation District. And I just have a quote from Jane Goodall. Each one of us makes a difference. We cannot live through a single day without making an impact on the world around us, and we have a choice as to what sort of difference we make.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for speaking to voters about the issues and for running for Anoka County Soil and Water Conservation District number 1. Thank you to all of you watching for your interest in becoming informed voters. You will find links to all the Meet the Candidates forms on the LWV ABC website as we move through this election season, as well as on QCTV's website. You can request an absentee ballot now on the Secretary of State's website, mnvotes.org, or go to your city hall to vote anytime after September 18th. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can do that online or when you go to vote. Make your voice heard in the general election by voting on or before November 3rd. Thank you, and stay healthy and safe.